All right, here we are. So Astartes Part 5 breakdown time. Now, I'm about to break this camera if it doesn't focus in right. Okay, so if you have not seen the other breakdowns yet or are just new to this and you just watched Astartes, you're trying to find something, I have the breakdowns episode 1 through 4 already in a playlist that I'm going to be adding this one to. So, you'll be able to go back and forth and take a look at that. Now, before I get into this, I have been considering making more videos, but the problem is, even when I was doing 2 hours of writing a day for my first lore video on the Imperial Man, and I hate this camera. Um, God, I hate this camera. Okay, there we go. Okay, okay, stay. Okay, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do something funny or if I wanted to do something serious. I could not decide. I literally couldn't because I was sitting there writing seriously, and then I'd think of something funny to say, and then I'd put that in there, and I don't know which route to go. So you guys are my subscribers. You guys watch my content. Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. So I'm gonna leave a link down in below to a straw poll, which is gonna have three options. One is take it seriously, you heretic. Two, stop being such an emperor bothering bastard, and be funny, and three, do what you feel is right. So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get into this. Now, there's going to be a lot of stops and starts in this video. There's going to be a lot of things like that, just simply because I'm going to be doing the best I can to get you the information as accurately as I can. I may not be right on some of this stuff. I might not be right. I'm going to be as close as possible. Now, I have seen some stuff put out that says certain things about things that are in this, but if I haven't seen them and I can't take them to be credible, I'm not going to take them to be credible. I'm going to put this out as a guy who knows about 40K to the extent that I know about 40K. That being said, here we go. So we're just going to go ahead and starts off like this. I thought this was a great idea. Okay, so right from the start, if you're looking at this, you can tell this is not the ship that they initially departed from. So this tells me that they're in some sort of fleet, and these are more standoff than the original sword class frigate that we were looking at when the series first started. Now, the ship in the foreground, when I was looking at it the first time, I initially thought, just by the angle and the way it looked, cruiser. I was actually leaning towards the lunar class cruiser, but there are certain key differences. One is in the length of the, I guess you would call it a neck. It's too long on this ship. So I downgraded the tonnage to light cruiser. This, while it doesn't have all the hallmarks, it does look like a variant of a light class cruiser called an Endeavor class. Now, it when I looked at the when I looked at the weaponry and things like that, that's kind of what set it off. The Endeavor does have broadside capability, but does have uh, lances on the front of the ship, which you can see. Now, the other ship in the background is actually an Astartes vessel. Now, the way that you can tell the difference between a good way to tell between Astartes and Imperial vessels is the way the front of the ship looks. The prow of the ship tells a lot. If you see that slope, the slope prow of the Imperial vessel, the light cruiser, it kind of looks like a reverse boat, the reverse front of a boat. Looks like a boat flipped upside down. Now, if you look at the Astartes vessel, it has two prongs in the front, shape of a U. Now, that is universal throughout the ship classes. The battle barge looks like a very fat and upscaled version of this. So, that being said, we're going to continue on. Now, so just um now I do think the ship class in the foreground is an Endeavor class, and I'm split on what the other one is. I'm really split. It could either be a Gladius or a Nova, but I can't see enough detail, which is not that big of a deal to me because the rest of this thing is so loaded with detail. Um, but it would come down to the weapon mounts, and I can't see where some of the weapon mounts might be on this. So, continuing on. Okay, so here we are. Now, this is most likely not on the Astartes vessel. And the reason I say this is because of the logos, well, the symbols on the backs of the personnel sitting at the consoles. Now, this person in the foreground is most, if I were to guess who he is, he's probably the captain of the company that is currently assisting the Inquisition. Now, they're watching live feeds through the helmets of the Astartes that are currently on board the other ship. Now, there's a lot to take in this, and a lot more. Like I said, I love the amount of detail he puts into this. So let's go through some of the details. Okay. Now, if you look at the back of the two personnel sitting down, these are humans. And if you're thinking that only Astartes serve on Astartes vessels, that's wrong. Astartes will commonly have a bunch of humans following them around, being in their fleet. They'll also have some chapters, not all, will have people that failed their test to become an actual Astartes, basically living among them. Now, I don't think this is the case. I think these are just stock standard humans that are part of the Astartes fleet. But the reason I don't think that they're on the Astartes fleet is they're lacking the iconography of the actual chapter. They actually have the double-headed eagle, Aquila, on their backs. So that's why I say that. Now there are several screens on here, but there are two screens of note. The first one is showing what the Astartes are seeing, and the second one is showing one person that is going to be very important in the future in the upper right hand corner. So I'm just going to hit play on this, and here we go. Now I loved this. When I first watched this, the first thing that popped in my mind when I saw these papers in this hallway were oath papers. Now, if you don't know what an oath paper is, I haven't seen that much of it in 41st Millennium books. I really haven't. But one thing that Astartes used to do during the time of the Great Crusade was they would take something called an oath of moment, and they would basically swear to either perform certain functions or just basically accord themselves with honor or bring honor to the chapter, something to that accord. They'd swear it before they actually got on their ships and their drop pods to go down to any sort of mission. At first, I thought that's what they were until I got a little bit further. These are most likely prayer papers. And the reason I say that is because of the incense that is beneath them. And you can see the entire corridor is layered with them. Now, something about paper in the 41st millennium. It isn't common. It isn't common by any stretch of the imagination. Most of the population of the Imperium is illiterate. They only know enough to perform the functions of their job. So, paper has to be produced in just by various worlds that actually have the resources to do it. So, for this much paper to be up, this is important. That's one of the reasons I think they're prayer papers. The second reason is what's beyond that door. So let's get in there. I love the detail of the incense, and you can actually see that on the door. The detail in this is so incredible. Look at the door. If you look at both sides of the door, you can actually see one head of the Imperial Eagle on both sides of the door. And if you look at the one on the right, it appears to have an eye. If you look at the left, it appears it doesn't. There we go. Okay. Now, I have heard rumors saying that the creator made this particular thing up and made it his own. We'll get into what this is in a few minutes. But for now, just know it's our big bad. And the detail on this is amazing. Just the way that the pistons move up and down. I love this. And if we needed any more evidence that they are working hand in hand with the Inquisition on this, look no further than this guy. This is a sanctioned psyker of the Inquisition. Now, you can see that he is not praying. He's trying to meditate. He's trying to clear his head. He has wearing something right now, the glass covering over his face, things of that nature. That is an advanced kind of psychic hood, meant to channel and harness his mental energies and basically help him focus. So I'm gonna be I hear some talking in the background. Now you can see several things in this shot. One is incense, and incense is important because he's probably praying to the God Emperor the entire time he's doing this. The second thing is you see the inquisitorial rosette, which is he has two of them on the chain around his hands. So give me 1 second. All right, I'm back. So it's been about 2 hours since I could sit back down. So here we go. Okay, so the last thing I was talking about okay. So basically, at this point, he is wired in to this orb that is sitting there. Now, it's not clear from the outset what's going on with the wiring, but what I think is happening is just helping him focus towards this particular orb. And I'll get into what the orbs are in a little bit because first I didn't know, and then I heard a lot of theories, and then one of them made the most sense to me. So basically, what he's doing is he's trying to basically monitor what's going on with this thing. So we're going to go ahead and 1 second. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit play on this. Okay, so I love this right here. All right, so these two right here, one of which is definitely a captain. The second one, I'm not quite sure who he is. The one in the foreground is definitely the captain. The second one, not quite sure. I'm loving the Corvus pattern though. Okay, transition over. This is a beautiful shot right here. Now, there's not really much to say about this. This is just a very mood-establishing shot. Once again, I love the atmosphere because you can actually see the cracks that happen when you got squeezed psychically. Okay, so let's pause this right here. Looking in of course you can see the my camera screwing. Of course you can see that again, but in the foreground is a construct of some sort. Now this looks very similar to the ones that were outside. I'm not even sure the ones that are outside were even, anything short of just probably cybernetic. Now take a look in the background, however, and you see the spinal cords and what appears to be, they're not quite skulls. They look more like constructs than anything else. Maybe constructs of the same thing Space Marines just fought outside. Now, now, what these things appear to be to me, and not just to me, but you know, I've heard it from a couple other people at this point. These are the Uvoth. So, what is a Uvoth? Basically, think of a species that viewed the warp as we would view fire. It was the basis for their technology. Now, a lot of the descriptions of them are vague, but one of the parts of the descriptions that really rings true is that um, they often use orbs or spheres that seem to crackle with energy. So this seems an exceptional representation of one. Now, there are a couple of reasons why this is really fucking bad. One, it explains the constructs a little bit better because their technology heavily relied on the warp and they were very gifted in using the warp. But if you know anything about the Imperium, warp fuckery is not allowed. Okay? So these orbs really point to the Uvoth as kind of being that, um, basically the big bad of the story. Oh god. Hit the right buttons. Yeah, really professional on this channel. Now, breathing, as you can see, this thing is actually trying to stop it. It's not really perfect. Now, if you're thinking, why was this thing even trying at this point? One thing you got to remember about the Astartes is they're clad in close to a ton of armor. They're almost 800 pounds their damn self. So this sort of blast from that orb would have taken any mortal off their feet and thrown them a pretty considerable distance, actually. Now these, I'm not quite sure of their like any kind of lore basis from them, but the way they're employed seems to be basically a kind of a more forceful psychic dampener than anything else. So they each take turns just poking the thing with it. And then they just step back waiting for it to do its job. Now, we come back to this. Now, this person is most likely not an Inquisitor themselves. They just work for the Inquisition. Oh wow, I didn't even notice this until just now. Look at the floor plating and look up at, like, right above the Inquisitor. That's just impressive. That's just something else I noticed. Let's see. Imperialis. I'm gonna actually have to look this up. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop recording. I'm gonna look this up. Okay, so I just got done attempting to do some translation on the two seals. One, well, actually three. The one the Astartes is standing on, the one right above the Inquisitor, and the one right above the contraption that is hooked into both the orb and the inquisitorial representative there. Now, the first, the top part doesn't make much sense to me. It's talking about the Imperium's buffer, or you could say shield. Okay. Now the second part is talking about the divine emperor's eyesight. So this is a direct reference to the Inquisition itself. So I wish I could see more of it to get a more accurate translation of it, but that's about as close as I can get, guys. So, I mean, that's like I said, the detail in this is amazing. Okay, so basically, right now it just seems like he is a go-between. He's attempting to listen. Okay, so I was looking to see if there was any more detail other than what I knew about what the two were saying to each other. It was a conversation between the two orbs where they were saying that essentially the Astartes defile everything they touch, and that the one that's on the ship needs to escape what's going on. And the way it's said is break your seal. And it pretty much tells the orb on the ship, the inquisitorial representative right there is hooked up to, is the one saying you must take them. So basically, at this point, he's going to look up to the captain and essentially tell him, even though we can't hear the conversation between the two, it's pretty clear what he says, that that his Marines are in danger. Instantaneous reaction. I love that part. And here's the reason why. I think this is the first time that the orbs actually realized that this guy could pay attention to what they were saying. Or it was at this point that the orb contained on the ship decided to directly attack the Inquisitor. And it wasn't that difficult for it to do. As I said before, if this is the Yuvoth, they are practically so adept at using the warp to do pretty much anything they want to that even some of the most advanced psychers would be pretty much just dabblers in essentially something they're masters in. So it wouldn't take that much to push this Inquisitor towards essentially possession. So now he's seeing visions of the future. Now this is a common theme. A lot of people mock some things in 40k because of how frequently some characters turn traitor. Now there's a reason behind all this. It's because the warp is very, very good at making people turn traitor. Some of the best examples of this, it's not clearly shown here, but what is shown here is the general process. What happens is visions are shown, rationales are made, things of that nature. My favorite part of one of the books is where a co-pilot was just sitting there, and in the space of them flying out of the ship and down into the atmosphere, he rationalized killing his pilot and then everyone else in the ship. He rationalized it to himself. So the warp has some extreme fuckery assigned to it, and this is no exception. But he's seeing visions of the future, and eventually his mind collapses and he can't handle certain things anymore. And at that point, he opens up to possession. Now, he's actively trying to find it, but he's losing that fight right now. The Marines are just watching it. They know something's going on. They know what he's messing with. So, and they knew this was a possibility. But that's the reason they held off until there was signs that there was no going back. Now, this is some not nice shit. Let me back up just a fraction of a second here. Yeah. Now remember, this is still through that thing. Now, the psychic hood around this guy's head is literally going haywire because now he's just open. He's literally a conduit to the warp. So if any of you are wondering why the Marines acted as they did, these Astartes acted as they did and instantly executed this guy, that's because somebody who is a conduit to the warp at that point is, it doesn't matter who they are far more dangerous to you than anything else around you at that point. And you have to remove them as the threat, which quite comprehensively done. Now this might be the first actual how they actually appear. This is the actual alien as it would naturally appear. This might be, or it might be just something they're showing. But that's just freaky. Now, what the fuck is happening here? Now, this is pure psychic power right here. That is happening. This is not magnetism. This is pure psychic power. They're being drawn into this thing, and it's going to transport them at this point. Now, if you remember me talking about plasma pistols and plasma weapons in general in the last couple of episodes of this, this is the reason you don't really like to fuck with plasma weaponry in the Imperium and 40k, because it's just as likely to hurt you as it is the enemy at some points. And really what it boils down to at this point is when he shot it, it was a desperation move. It was a pure desperation move to stop this thing from doing what it was doing. But it didn't even hurt the thing. And number of reasons that could have happened, but the entire weapon system backfired and hit him instead. So that's why his arm blew off. We're going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship. Okay. Okay, so before I start this up, again, I'm just going to say what I think is happening here. Now, this is just me speculating what's going on. I think that this is they are now inside the warp. They are no longer inside real space, but they are being somehow protected by this creature, either by virtue of what it is or its mastery of the warp. They're not being torn apart by demons at this point. Now, that might be wrong, very well could be, but I don't think I am at this. That is... Okay, so let me rewind it a slight bit. Okay, so as Magnus will say, it's all the colors of the warp. This is true. Now, if you notice in the background, in just the faint image that we get of it, there are figures moving around in the background. But it's neither here nor there. Okay, at that point something happened to the creature itself. The journey was interrupted. Now, this is slightly odd. And the reason for this is that basically this is Astartes' blood. And so he's vomiting blood, so he sustained internal injuries, including having his arm blown off. Okay, I'm going to pause it there for 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Alright, so if you look at his head, you see two things. You see the beginning of the black carapace running down his back, the back of his neck. You also see right above his left eyebrow 3 studs. Now, if you know nothing about it, those studs those studs represent years of service. Now, depending on the chapter, depending on which chapter you're looking at, their history, anything like that, you're either looking at 10, 25, anywhere up to 50 years of service. So this Marine, at the very least, the Space Marine at the very least, has spent 30 years as a fully fledged Space Marine. So let that sink in for a minute. So this guy was recruited probably around the age of 9, went through the process. So this Space Marine is at the extreme least around 50 years old. So just to give you an idea, this guy could be anywhere from 50 years old to, if it's on the high range, 160 almost. And he looks very unhappy. Now, what these are, I haven't the faintest fucking clue. I don't have the slightest clue what these things are. But if you look at them, they have the crest on the back, the shoulder pauldrons. At first, it looks kind of like the things that they fought inside of the ship, only on a much larger scale. But at the same time, it's not. The skulls seem human, but at the same time, we all know that could very well not be the case. So we're just going to have to wait on this, unless somebody knows something that I simply put have no knowledge of. But I'm going to hit play on this, let it go the rest of the way. Okay, here comes the next part. Okay, back. Do I even need to say what this is? Who this is? You see the Hydra on their helm? Now, this is supposedly the second chapter that he has come up with. Now, the head iconography alone, first thing that comes up, Iron Hands. Right off the bat, successor chapter of the Iron Hands. Before anything else happens. Okay, so first thing that comes to mind when I see this weapon fire is Splinter Gun, Eldar. And once more, I love the amount of detail. Now, basically, if you don't know anything about Eldar weapons, Eldari, not Drukari, is that most of their technology is based off a substance called Wraithbone. It's highly psychically active, and they pretty much make everything out of it, including booklets where they blame humanity for all of their faults. Now, essentially what it is, it's also been another way to call it is a shuriken gun. And what it does is it fires these nanometer thick shurikens of Wraithbone at high velocity. And I think that's what he just got hit by. And I love the way the armor is frayed on this, because that's what would happen. These hairlines are actually metallic, and they're micromillimeter thick. So that would be the damage you would expect to see off of this when it hits armor plating like this. And then we have good old-fashioned tank. And that's it. That is my Astartes Part 5 breakdown. Where this is going to go from here, I don't know. I have loved this series from the first time I saw it, and I really do appreciate you guys pushing me to get this done. So, that being said, please take a look for the straw poll down there. I'm going to attempt to do my first lore video. And I gotta tell you, putting together one of those is I have developed a whole new appreciation for some of my favorite YouTubers. All that being said, I'll catch you guys next time.